I'm going to be muting my computer throughout because I'm taking breakfast late a little.
All right, I'll hit it. So I wrote that he explains that one will suffer in future lives due to impious acts in this lifetime. Therefore, he says one must atone in this lifetime for the sins and surrender unto Krishna. One may counteract these sins by performing fruitive acts. Parikshit Maharaj rejects this because one may atone for his sin and yet still go on and commit another sin once again. So the process of repeatedly sinning and atoning is pointless. He says that one who is attached to sense enjoyment will commit sinful acts again and again. So it's that attachment ultimately that if we do not, the desires are not eliminated, we will inevitably continually commit the sin.
Nice, nice. Anyone else want to add anything to that? Or add any? That was good. Any other contributions? No? Okay. Oh, we'll accept that. So what is Shukadev Goswami's answer in terms of Gyan? And I think I was supposed to say, why does Maharaj Parikshit show dissatisfaction with this answer? Okay, someone else go.
Okay, I want to go. Sukadev recommends study of Vedanta for liberation from material contamination. By jnana, a person is temporarily purified because the root of sin is not burned. So that's why Maharaj Parikshit show dissatisfaction, because the root of sin is not burned. So again, person may start doing sinful activities.
All right. Anything else to add to that? Any other further insights? Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
Haribol, everyone. My obeisances. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want me to read all of the parts of Gyan, like the different components of the angas, but
unnecessary, just your insights.
Okay. I think other important things were just I think you said that Maharaj Parikshit, he like had a look on his face of dissatisfaction because that because it wasn't written in the verse, but like it was a better answer and he was trying to be a good student or something like that, but he was still not fully satisfied, so he's just like not impressed. I think that's like the main point that I would add to that.
Okay, anything else? Yeah, I think the idea here, just in terms of the greater Gaudiya theology, is, I think I mentioned this in one of the classes also, but Maya has a vidya shakti and vidya shakti. So by Gyan process, the vidya shakti is, and I don't know what the what's the most precise word to use, but it's like invoked or manifest. And so one is enlightened, basically. You have awareness of yourself as different from Prakriti. But that's still due to the vidya shakti of Maya, which is basically Sattva-guna. So you're still in Maya. You're not out of the material world yet. And so because the gunas of nature are always vying for competition, then because you're not out of Maya, again, the other vidya shakti may again overtake. And that way you trapped. And Krishna also says in Gita that one can only cross beyond the gunas of Prakriti by bhakti, right? Arjuna specifically asked that question. How does one cross beyond the gunas of Maya? And Krishna says by bhakti only. And also two Gita verses. So that is why this is not a satisfactory answer. at least for Parikshit Maharaj or Gaudiya Vaishnavas. You may have awareness of distinction between matter and spirit, but you're still in Maya. You're just in the good part of Maya, or better part of Maya, the vidya shakti part. So that is not a satisfactory answer. Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I have a question about this part.
Yeah.
When listing the angas of Gyan, the translation says regularly chanting the holy name of the Lord. And I thought that was interesting. I can't remember if you said something about that in class, but maybe if you want to comment on that. The Sanskrit word was like, starts with an N. I can't remember it. See if I can find it. Niamena, I think. Yeah. Niamena is the Sanskrit word, which other definitions given on Vedabase are regulation or by religious observances.
Like niyamas.
Okay.
So when the niyamena, some observances. So like in yoga, like yogas, they have 5 niyamas, observances. I don't know what they are. Brahmacharya is one, tapasya is another, Ishvara pranidhana is another, and 2 others are there. So yeah, it's what are the niyamas for a Gyan process? I don't know precisely. I actually was reading about this just yesterday, incidentally. But I don't think chanting is necessarily like a thing. Or maybe it's a thing. I don't know. Maybe it's like an observance. They do some element of bhakti is there as a supportive, subordinate aspect of their practice. So maybe it works in that way. But it's certainly not chanting the holy name like in the bhakti sense that we normally think of it. So
I thought it was an interesting choice of translation for this passage, especially if this is being displayed as the incorrect method, and the correct method is chanting the holy name.
Well, it's not exactly incorrect, it's just not satisfactory.
Right, sorry, yeah. Less complete.
Yeah, less complete. That's a better way of probably just saying it. Also, Prabhupada is still doing his work of ensuring that we are devotees at the end of the day. So, karma yoga, that is bhakti yoga. Ashtanga yoga, that is also bhakti. When you read the Gita, everything is bhakti yoga. Gyan yoga, Sankhya yoga, that is also bhakti. So everything is bhakti. Because of course that is Krishna's purpose. So Prabhupada is just reading the conclusion to everything, which is all right. Yeah. Also, these verses are often quoted like when Prabhupada is speaking, just like sense control is an important part of your bhakti practice. Not exactly bhakti, but your surrender. I mentioned Upadeshamrita, the first 3 verses are indicative of like Sharanagati. And that verse, the first verse of that is sense control, right? Control the urges of speech, mind, and body. Because if you don't do that, you'll not be able to like avoid the things that are unfavorable and accept the things that are favorable. If your senses are completely walling out, then it'd be very hard to accept what's favorable and reject what's unfavorable. So there's some amount of sense control required. So then these sorts of verses, you could, especially in Prabhupada's writings, you hear him quote them a lot. So I'm like, this is really important for us. And it is important for us, especially, the like human apparatus that we're embodied in right now, this has some value, these sorts of ideas. But they're not exactly bhakti proper. So we just make the distinction just for, you could say, theological purposes. But, they're not unimportant. Just not satisfactory. That's all. Okay. Next question. What is Sri Shuka's answer in terms of bhakti? And how is it contrasted against karma and gyan? So 15 through 18. Who wants to go for this one? Oops. Someone else. Mm-hmm. This one.
I can go.
Okay.
So Bhakti Yoga can uproot the weeds of sinful actions with no possibility that they will revive, as opposed to karma, which performing atonement doesn't uproot desires. And yeah, just by simply performing devotional service, one can be completely purified. But the question is contrasted against karma and jnana, right? So
Yeah,
against,
I think you kind of got that, but yeah.
even knowledge, like as you said, knowledge of the difference between matter and spirit is not enough to uproot completely the desires. So one will perform sinful activities again, be forced.
Okay, not bad. Anyone wants to add anything to that, or some other contribution from your writings?
Haribol, I like the last verse of that passage where he says, "My dear king, as a pot containing liquor cannot be purified, even if washed in the waters of many rivers, non-devotees cannot be purified by processes of atonement, even if they perform them very well." Yeah, so I just wanted to add that, and I guess just reiterating your point about Maya Shakti being in the karma, you're working with a vidya trying to move towards the vidya Shakti, and then in Gyan you've got vidya but you're still in Maya. So bhakti is the only thing that can completely eradicate that, as Rupa Goswami says in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu.
Nice. Anything else? I was thinking about this particular verse also, because here he's saying that the path is very nice because it's filled with devotees, whereas Gyan is done by itself. At least you're supposed to do it by yourself. Even two Gyanis in the room would be a disturbance. So there's that element also. One doesn't have to be afraid that they'll be left alone because there's sadhu sangha. And there was some other point here I kind of forgot. Okay, very good. Let's move on. Fourth question: what is the purpose of telling Ajamil's story? 6119. This is the most easy question. Because Ajamil's story is an example of a situation where, how did you type that so fast? Where a living entity is protected by the Lord for even once surrendering to him through chanting his name. This is to extol the qualities of bhakti above the process of karma and jnana. Very good. Nice answer, Jaya. Okay, copy paste. I was like, dang, you type fast. That's pretty good. All right. So passage 2, first telling of Ajamil's story by Shukadeva Goswami. So what do we learn in this first telling of Ajamil's story? So that's an interesting question. That's more open. What did y'all say?
Okay, I can go. We learned that by chanting the name Narayan without offense, the Vishnudutas came to rescue Ajamil, who had committed many sins in the past. So we learned that although Ajamil has committed many sins in the past, but by chanting the name Narayana without offense, he was nullified of all sins, and that's why the Vishnudutas came to rescue him.
All right, that's all right. But there's some other important elements to this. Anyone else? Yeah, please.
If a person does a little bit of bhakti or perform bhakti that is not perfect, that person will not reach Yamaraj above. What to speak of someone that practices bhakti without the conditioning of the gunas?
That's
Even
all right. That's all right. But there's other elements that, because this is the first telling of Shukadeva Goswami's of Ajamil's story by Shukadeva Goswami. And this story is also demonstrating the elements that we heard in the first passage, that karma and jnana aren't sufficient. So that is the other important aspect of the story that he's telling. Because he just said, basically, we just heard karma and jnana is insufficient. Only bhakti is effective. That's what we heard in the first passage. So the story wants to also demonstrate those elements. So how is Ajamil's, this first telling of the story, demonstrating that? That's basically what we learned in the first passage. Okay,
Can I give it a shot, Prabhu? So first we hear that Ajamil was a Brahmana, proper Brahmana, and then he had some bad association. He was a victim to the modes, and so he lost his status as a Brahmana. And then he engaged in sinful life. By chance, he had a son named Narayana, and he was very fond of him and was able to say his name at death. And so whenever when he saw the Yamadutas, and so when he said that, the Vishnudutas showed up, and then the Yamadutas and Vishnudutas had their conversation, because the Yamadutas are kind of representing karma and karma's atonement process, and the Vishnudutas are representing bhakti and that atonement process. So there's some incredulity, as you said.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Right. So because he was a Brahmana, that means he was a karmi. Karmi means a smarta Brahmana. So he was a karmi. And he was a Brahmana, so he was also learned, a knowledgeable person. But his karma and jnana could not protect him from the reactions of his sins. So that's how his story is demonstrating that karma and jnana is not effective, which is what we heard in the first passage. And then, he destroyed his life of karma by sinful activity. And then he chanted the name of Narayana, he was rescued. So that's demonstrating the bhakti part, how bhakti is very effective, even a little bit is done. So yeah, that is what we're supposed to pick up from the first telling of the story. It's important. Very good, Agape. You get the full 3 points. When the teachers were grade papers, you could get 3 points per answer or something like that. And sometimes you got like 1 out of 3 or like that. Okay, so what is there means the Yamadutas and Vishnudutas, mutual incredulity. Why is there mutual incredulity between the Yamadutas and Vishnudutas? So who's got the answer to that? You know what this word incredulity is, right? Incredulous. Incredulous means you can't believe someone just said something or did something. You're just, if you had to make it like an emoji, it would look something like that. Incredulous. I can't, I'm willing to believe that someone has said or done something. So it's called incredulous. So they're both incredulous. Vishnudutas and Yamadutas incredulous, looking at each other. So why? Yes, Sri Govindaji.
Well, again, I was confused by the word mutual, because there's incredulity because, but I'm not exactly clear that it's mutual incredulity, only because they have distinct differences in what they're incredulous about.
Okay, I just meant both of them have it, so that's probably
right. Okay, because my thought was when it's mutual, it's mutually on one thing, but in this sense, each have incredulity, but it's distinctly different. In the case of the Yamadutas, they're incredulous because, from their perspective, there is they see Yamaraj as the master, and that they're not aware or understanding that there is a supreme Lord above Yamaraj, and they're not understanding who are these Vishnudutas that are coming, and with what authority do they come to chastise the Yamadutas for their actions, because they are representing Yamaraj and acting in his on his behalf. So therefore, they're incredulous to the appearance and the questioning of them by the Vishnudutas, whereas the Vishnudutas are surprised at the Yamadutas, who, in their claim of serving Yamaraj, and Yamaraj being the supreme judge of religious principles, they are seeing them as totally unaware of what the principles of religious action are and how to judge based on those principles. So from the Vishnuduta's perspective, the Yamadutas are entirely acting devoid of an understanding of religious principles and chastising ajamila.
I think according to how you define mutual, which is probably the right way, because I'm horrible at English grammar. But I think it works here also because they're actually incredulous about the same thing. The Yamadutas are incredulous because they say you're transgressing dharma by opposing us. And the Vishnudutas are incredulous because they think you are also transgressing dharma.
Okay.
By not, because the true dharma is the chanting of the holy names for the Vishnudutas. And the real dharma for the Yamadutas, as we'll hear, are the dharma pertaining to the three modes of nature. So they're actually incredulous about the same thing. Like, how dare you transgress dharma in this way? But their understanding of dharma is categorically different. So that's why they end up being mutually incredulous.
Thank you. That was a great explanation.
Yeah, there's a nice verse for this in Bhagavad Gita. Yanisha Sara Bhutanam Yashnam Jagrati Samyami Tashnam Jagrati Bhutani Sanisha Pashutomuni. So it is night for common man, as a time of awakening for the samyami, self-controlled person, and the time of awakening for the Yamadutas is night for the Vishnudutas, although they see it, Pashutomuni. They also know the principles of dharma pertaining to three gunas, so they see it. Pashata, they see it. But Sanisha, they're asleep to that because they're awake to the higher dharma. So in that way, it also works here. Very good.
One comment too.
Yeah.
Actually, I was thinking, like when I was going through this thing, like many times we hear devotees saying that once we are practicing bhakti, we need to develop like good qualities like humility and tolerance and other things. And many times devotees say, oh, what is the use of practicing bhakti if you are not developing good qualities? So I was thinking, like, let's say if somebody is a bhakta, but he is still not developing good qualities, but okay, at least one thing he is doing is that he won't see Yamraj again. So I think that's the use of bhakti.
That's a good argument.
Yeah.
So if someone gives explanation, what is the use? You said, raise your hand. They won't have to see Yamaraj. That's pretty good. Like, maybe not the highest thing, but it's pretty good. I'll take that. I'll take not seeing Yamaraj.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Tamir, you always have these little cheeky comebacks. Yes. I don't know why devotees say like that. What is the use of bhakti? Why would anyone say that? Even so many statements saying, even the tiniest bit of bhakti, right? Krishna is telling, what is that verse? Nehabi kramanashosti pratavayo navidite swapam apiyasya dharmasya trayate marato bhaya. Even a little bit of this bhakti dharma, if it is done, will release you from the greatest fear. That's something. What is the use? Trayate marato bhaya. Krishna is saying trayate marato bhaya, like, I'll be released from the greatest fear if I do even a little bit of this bhakti. So that seems like a lot. So these sorts of classes, what is the use of bhakti without developing good qualities, is because we live in a community. So if community members have bad qualities, it creates a disturbance for the community. So when preaching to a community, you know, preachers will say stuff like, in other words, the classes aren't always meant to just explain the theology. The classes are meant to be practical for the congregation. So if you're just breaking down the theology and you just say, hey, bhakti is, you know, all important, whether or not you have good qualities, that's not practical for the congregation. So in order to make it practical for the congregation, you have to add all these extra elements. What is the use of bhakti without good qualities? So that people will, in the community, will understand that they should, you know, have some moral standard. They should develop good qualities. Otherwise, there'll be a disturbance to each other. So that is the difference between like a preacher preaching to a congregation versus like a student studying the theology. So we have to take it in those two. It's a pedagogical way of explaining things. So when you're doing that, one may not always be 100% precise. in terms of the theological presuppositions, because they're trying to inspire your congregation to be, good and nice and kind to each other and so on like that. So I don't think we should find fault with such individuals, but that's how it is. Shivani is saying in the chat, it is normal for parents or spouses who aren't devotees to say, what is the use of your bhakti if you haven't transformed your character? Yeah, because they're non-devotees. So that is a natural question for them. I get that. When me and my sister fight, our dad says, what is the use of your chanting? So in this way, we should not fight in front of the non-devotees. We should fight when we're not in front of the non-devotees. Because then they will have misunderstanding. Also, we are neophyte devotees, so we're not exactly the best representation of the practice of bhakti. But people are seeing us and we're proclaiming we are bhaktas. So, in order not to bring disrepute to God and his bhakti and his devotees, it's probably wise to act proper in front of people. Or just save the ghetto to when you're in private. Just wait. Like, you know what? I'm going to curse you out, but we're in front of people right now. Wait until we get home. And like that. And don't do it in front of everyone. Yeah, we tell him to see Radhanath Swami and tell him he is really chanting. So then even that is also a little bit dangerous, because he may say, why should I see Radhanath Swami? If you are his disciples and y'all acting like this, then they will bring, we will bring disrepute to the Guru. That's why I never tell anyone who my Guru is. People know, they know, but I never tell anyone these days. I used to joke that this is why Shastra says, hide your Guru. People sometimes ask me, why hide your Guru? And I say, because I'm a nonsense. I'm not trying to bring him bad reputation. Otherwise, they will say, oh, you're a Guru of so-and-so and you're acting like this. Then they will take that as a fault of the master, right? The Guru. So for this way, as far as, social engagement is concerned, like a moral standard and a moral rectitude is necessary. Otherwise, people who are trapped in the gunas of Prakriti, they'll not appreciate bhakti. And in that way, we kind of do, in a sense, a disservice. But if someone's studying the actual theology, then, good qualities or bad qualities notwithstanding, bhakti is supremely wonderful. Whether or not someone's extremely sinful or not. Your father tells you, would you do like this when he's around? And then we both sober up. Yeah, that's a good challenge. These are good challenges to us for sure. Okay, let's move on a little bit here. So what questions are posed by the Vishnudutas to the Yamadutas? I don't even remember all of them. I think there was like 5 of them. Who's got that? Yes, anyone?
Like, I don't know, like, what is the essence of dharma? How can, what is the essence of adharma? How can adharma be measured? What is the essence of dharma? How can dharma can be measured? What is the process of punishment? Who is a candidate for punishment?
Nice. Are there any other questions? I honestly don't remember.
There was one more.
Yeah.
Are all karmis engaged in fruitive activities punishable, or only some of them?
Right. That's an important one. Okay, let's get the answers. So how do the Yamadutas answer the questions of the Vishnudutas? Include which verses answers what questions. You don't have to do that part in your answers right now in the live, but that was just to help you make the connect. Okay, first question. What is the essence of dharma and how is it measured? What is the essence of adharma and how is it measured? I think that was answered in one shloka. Who's got it?
That which is not prescribed in the Vedas.
Can you say a little bit more? I think you're muted, or maybe you're not speaking. We can't hear you.
I'll have to open the verse. That was 140. Oh, it's the first chapter, right?
Mhm.
Maybe someone wants to help me.
Yeah, someone help.
Prescribed in the Vedas constitutes dharma, the religious principles.
Sorry, Bo.
Okay,
Yes.
I was just answering a dharma. What is the essence of
Right. Okay. Cool.
to-
Agape.
okay.
Oh, I think she was getting it there. That which is prescribed in the Vedas constitutes dharma, the religious principles, and the opposite of that is irreligion. That's the first
Right.
question.
Right.
And then, do you want me to keep going with the questions?
Sure.
So then there's this one. I see this one as answering both the second and third. The
Yes.
candidates for punishment are those who are confirmed by these many witnesses. This is talking about like all of the sun and the moon and all that, to have deviated from their prescribed regulative duties. Everyone engaged in fruitive activities is suitable to be subjected to punishment according to his sinful acts. And then, therefore, all living entities within this material world are punishable. And then, in proportion to the extent of one's religious or irreligious actions in this life, one must enjoy or suffer the corresponding reactions of his karma in the next.
Right.
And then they go on talking about how we're all helpless.
Nice. Good. Yeah, everyone is punishable because they're under the influence of the gunas. And the gunas are always, in flux. So no one can be perpetually in sattva. So then you'll sometimes be in rajas, tamas, and then you'll do sin. So that's why everyone can be punished. The other thing was that how you measure dharma and adharma. So the essence of dharma and adharma is what's prescribed in the Vedas is dharma. And what is it proscribed? That's not right. What is what's the opposite of prescribed?
Prohibited.
Prohibited. What is prohibited in the Vedas is the essence of a dharma. So how can that be measured? Well, if you do what's prescribed, that's how it's measured. And if you do what's prohibited, that's how a dharma is measured. So that was that other part of that first question too. Okay, good. Very good. Anything else? Any other questions about this? Agape answered them very well, comprehensively. Question 9 here is explain how this passage demonstrates why Maharaj Parikshit rejected Shukadeva Goswami's answer in terms of karma in passage 1.
I can try.
Yeah, please.
Not a single living entity can remain unengaged even for a moment.
Right.
One must act by his natural tendency
Mhm.
according to the three modes of material nature,
Right.
because this natural tendency forcibly makes him work in a particular way.
Right.
So even after performing atonement, one will repeat the sins because they are his natural tendency.
Right.
So that's why Maharaj Parikshit rejected Sukadeva Goswami's answer, because initially he told by performing karma at atonement, one can nullify the sins. But if it is his natural tendency to commit sins, he will do it again. And then second, he said by studying the Vedanta and everything, one can atone. But again, like studying Vedanta will not destroy the root of the sin. So after a period of time, it can again show up.
Yeah, this idea here, this nice verse was spoken by Yamadutas, summarizing. Esha Pakriti Sangena Purusha Shaviparya. So since the living entity is associated with material nature, he is in an awkward position. Viparya is translated as awkward. But if in the human life, but if in the human form of life, he is taught how to associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Isha Sangha, or his devotee, this position can be overcome, Viliyate. So this is actually a very nice verse from the first chapter, spoken by the Yamadutas. So yeah, the problem is we are sick, drunk on the gunas of Prakriti. Esha Prakriti Sangena, Purusha Viparya. That's why we're in this, as Prabhupada is translating, an awkward position. Viparya. So asisa eva nachirat Isha Sangha Viliyate. But if we do Isha Sangha, we can vanquish this awkward position. So that is the answer there. Okay, last question that I have here for the chapter 1 is what is
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
yeah. Yes.
I had a question about the one before the Yamaduta's answer. In their answer, like in text like 40 and 41, 42, I think, they're saying that the Vedas come from Narayana, that Narayana is the controller of the gunas, that Narayana is the cause of all causes. And later on, they compare Yamaraj to the Paramatma, which is confusing to me because later they'll go to Yamaraj and say, we thought you were in charge. So how can they, know that Narayana is the cause of all causes and is the controller in their answer to the Vishnu Dutas, and then later approach Yamaraj like, we thought you were the boss?
Well, here in verse 40, if you recall, Itu Shushruma. So we have heard this. Presumably they've heard it from Yamaraj. So Vedo Narayana Saksha Swayam Hur Iti Shushuma. So we discussed this point also, the Shushuma. I think Prabhupada's purport, he zooms in on this point. So this we have heard from, presumably they've heard it from Yamaraj. So that the Narayanas are the Vedas are directly coming from Narayana, who is Swayambhu, self-born. So how do you know this? Oh, Shushuma, we've heard it. So even though they have heard it, so your question is, if they have heard this, then why do they think Yamaraj is supreme? Because he's acting as a judge in this world. So he may have said, hey, these Vedas are coming from Narayana. So you can use this as the means for understanding what is dharma, what is a dharma, how to measure it, who to punish and all that. But everyone they're punishing is under the jurisdiction of Yamaraj. So in that way, they're thinking that he is supreme. Because practically that is the greatest power a person can have in this material world, the power to be judged over someone else's life, isn't it? I actually read this the other day in a book. I'm trying to read 30 books before the year is over. For the last 3 months, I was being super duper lazy. So I'm like really behind schedule. I'm only in my 22nd book. But let me see if I can find this statement. I really appreciated it yesterday. It was a book about our ghetto world. But hold on. I highlighted it because I thought it was a very nice statement. This is my Kindle. How do you go to check out your highlights? This one, popular highlights. Okay. I only have like few. How do you go like all your highlights? My notebook? No. Okay, I don't know how to do it. Anyway, it was a nice quote. I wish I could share it. I wish I could find it easily. But basic idea is like this. That the great power to have, practically the greatest power you can have in this material world is the power to be the judge over someone else's existence and what happens to it. So in this way, they must have been thinking Yamaraj is supreme that way, even though they had heard that the Vedas come from Narayana. Okay. That happens to us also, right? We hear so many things during the class, and after the class gets over, we think another thing. Isn't it? That happens to us also. You hear so much in the class itself, you hear it, but you come out of the class thinking another thing. And then if someone asks you, what did you learn? You share what you think and not what you heard. Isn't it? That is why we're doing this exercise now. When you are forced to recapitulate, ideally, you're supposed to recapitulate what you heard. But because many of you, I assume, don't take notes while hearing, because it's like annoying also. So then when you end up recapitulating, you go back and read. And then when you read and then you think about it, you write down what you think. Isn't it? It's actually a little bit different. You hear one thing, but you think another thing. So that happens to everyone in this material world. So it's not that we are recapitulating what we heard. That's why disciples who hear very, nicely, they sound like they're gurus. Like one of my friends, he has hardly read any literature because he just hasn't had time in his life. Most of what he knows, and he knows a lot, and his articulation is like amazing. But most of what he knows is just from hearing. And so because he only is learning from hearing, when he has to recapitulate, it's what he's heard, for the most part. I'm sure he's contemplated also, and that gets in there too. And it's not to say that we shouldn't think, because Shruti also says, first there's Shravanam, then there's Manana. Manana means contemplation on the subject matter. And then there's Nididhyasana, meditation. So it's not that we should not contemplate, but usually we end up contemplating our own thoughts and not what we hear. That's the problem. So the vibration is coming at us and we have certain thoughts about it. And then we manana those thoughts. We contemplate those thoughts, not what we're hearing. And then we recapitulate the result of our own thinking. So it's a little bit, oh yeah, it reminds me of your 10 faults of hearing list. Oh my God, I completely forgot about that. I don't even know where to find that. Where did I post that? Did I post it on Facebook? Probably like years ago though. I need to find it. That was a good list. I think I made that list with Kishore Gopal. We made it as a joke, but then we were also thinking that like, this is very good. Oh, but I heard it in a recording. Yeah. I need to find that. That was a great list. The 10 faults of hearing. So yeah. Anyway, so because the Yamadutas are also part of 3 gunas, probably this defect may be there also. Because also at the end, they're saying Isha Sangha Viliyate. By doing Isha Sangha, you can destroy the association with Prakriti. But they're still thinking Yamaraj is supreme. So there's something is missing between the hearing and the thinking part. So like this. This is going on. It's very hard to hear, actually. As soon as the speaker begins speaking, and the mind starts thinking, how I want to take this. Just like I hear this now, I hear with the new people here, so here at Bhakti Center. So I talk to them sometimes, it was rare. And then they'll say, they heard something in class that they didn't like. They say, but the way that I think about it, and I just start laughing internally because I don't want to make them feel bad. But I just start laughing like this is our issue. And that a little difficult to hear. Okay. Anything else anyone wants to ask? Oh, I think the last question was here. What is Shukadev Goswami trying to convey by sharing the Yamaduta's telling of Ajamil's story, second story? Were there any new elements there in the second telling of the story? Or is it just expansion of the kind of the ideas we heard previously? What did you guys write for that one? Anything? For the last question in the chapter?
I wasn't really clear how this question differed from question 4 and 5, so I didn't really answer this.
Me neither. That's why I wanted to see if anyone wrote anything down. Maybe I forgot that I had already asked question 4 and 5. So again, I asked the same question in a different way.
I put an asterisk, C4 and
Okay, good. Yeah, I also don't know the difference here. Okay, so taking that no one else wrote anything down or similar, we'll pause here for today. Will you guys be chapter 2 is there? At least if you have some time today, you can look at up to Sri Vishwanath's commentary, just the first passage, basically a question in Sri Vishwanath's commentary. So if you have some time, look through that. Maybe we go through it tomorrow, a little bit at least. Let's see. Hari Om Tat Sat, thanks a lot.
I have one question, I'm sorry. So
Yeah.
just the 4 questions in chapter 2 that you had already sent, is that, or were there more? Because
Yeah, I added more this morning. So I completed all of chapter 2 this morning.
Okay.
Then I'll do chapter 3 later. So you can try to answer as much as possible. We'll do a little bit tomorrow at least, just so we can have some exchange.
I'm flying tomorrow, but Chamasundari will represent.
Great. The better
and,
half.
Last question. So,
Yeah.
so in future, will it be possible for you to give the questions even before the class? Like, because so that when we sit in the class, we know that these are the questions we need to answer. And by hearing in the class, we can just make notes at that time. Like if we get the questions beforehand.
Oh, you mean before we start to study?
Yeah, before we start to study. Yeah.
No, I'm not do like that. I'll do it this way only. So in the class itself, because then the hearing will become awkward. Because then you're looking at the questions like, okay, there it is. And so although it doesn't look like it, and it probably isn't very much like this is intended to be like a bhakti practice, right? I get to practice the kirtan aspect, and you get to practice the shravan aspect, right? So we have to practice that. And then the questions are there to give you a chance to practice the kirtan aspect, right? Recapitulating what has been heard. So that is why we give the questions afterwards. Otherwise, one will become too mental if the questions are given before. There's no need to really hear in so much detail. You're just here to answer the questions. So that is like the academy is like this. That's why so many of us who go through academy, we ended up not learning anything. That's a fact. You know, we hardly learned anything. Like, ask most people, what did you learn out of school? We can't even say that we learned English properly. a lot of us. I always say, the only thing I got out of school that I have to this day is typing. I learned how to type in the 6th grade. And that's the only thing that I've retained. Everything else I have not retained. Nothing. No history, no math, no anything. No home economics, nothing. No English. You know, my English is all right, but it's got a lot of defects there. And I've retained literally nothing. So that's because the method of teaching is like this. Yeah, I think it's saying, yeah, I don't remember a thing. That is true for most people. And so many of my friends also and others, the jobs they get have nothing to do with what they learned in school and college also, which means they waste a lot of time and money when they could have just went on an apprenticeship. 6 months, learn everything, and then nice job they have. Anyway, so the academy is a little bit strange. I could speak very heavy about it confidently because Prabhupada did. But if we do like our Bhakti Shastri thing is also like this, which makes it very, like kind of a little bit lacking potency because people do it too academically. So they're given all the questions in the beginning and they take the class just to pass the test. And then they, of course, pass the test. But then if you ask them 2 weeks later about the subject matter, they don't know anything. I used to tease Bhakti Shastri people about this all the time. So I've never taken a Bhakti Shastri. I just, read Prabhupada's books and read commentaries and really tried to learn the subject matter. I heard also. And then I used to grill the Bhakti Shastri people. I would ask them questions from Gita, from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. I would grill them. And they wouldn't be able to answer, and then I would make fun. So why you take Bhakti Shastri then? You're not giving the answer. Of course, maybe that's a defect of the approach also to it by the student. but I think it could be a defect in the method also used to teach. So I'll not give, anyway, all this to say, I'll not give the questions before. You practice Shravanam, I'll practice Kirtan. Both of us are defective in each department, but we're given a chance here to practice. And then afterwards, give the questions, then you can go back and think on what you've heard, and then you get to practice Kirtan, and I get to practice Shravan. Like this.
Thank you.
Sham Sundar said, can someone send the 10 faults of hearing? I'll look for that. I remember, oh my God, that was like literally like 2 or 3 years ago. It was kind of done as a joke between Kishore Gopal and I. And then I said, this is good. And I shared it on some platform. You posted it to Facebook. Yeah. Okay. Maybe I can find it then. All right, we'll stop here. Thank you all very much for tolerating me. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Gaudiya Guru Varga ki jai, Gauda Premanandi Hari Hari Bo.